campaign slogans from 2018 that the PCs used was Ontario open for business. Why would this party now be pro-carbon tax, which, of course, is anti-business?
Well, they claim they're not. And when I was running in the last election and Belinda was running, even the candidates we were running against were saying, "Oh, we're not for the carbon tax." And yet, let's go back. Doug Ford wins the PC leadership on axe the carbon tax promise. He comes in, he gets rid of cap and trade. It was probably the last good thing he did. Well, maybe slashing Toronto City Council. Two good things he did in the first 5 minutes he was in office. And then it all went south from there. But he got rid of cap and trade, and he replaced one carbon tax in Ontario with two, Dave. And he spent $200 million in court telling everyone that he was fighting this cash grab, the Justin Trudeau carbon tax. But before the Supreme Court ruled, he cut a deal with Justin. Before he even got the decision from the Supreme Court, he cut a deal with Trudeau, and it was reported in even the mainstream media that Trudeau had signed off on Doug Ford's industrial carbon tax. And so now in Ontario, we have two carbon taxes. We have Trudeau's consumer carbon tax, and we have Doug Ford's industrial carbon tax. And to make matters worse, I wrote an op-ed 3 years ago that, surprisingly, Dave, the Financial Post wrote it. And, you know, back then we were still hoping that maybe the Ford government would turn things around. We said, hey, your approach in court is wrong. You're throwing the argument in court. You've got three legal tests. You're conceding two of them. They didn't care. They stuck with the same legal approach, which was to throw the case in court. He knew he was going to lose because they didn't try, and he introduced his industrial carbon tax before that Supreme Court decision came out on a nice little handshake sweetheart deal with Justin Trudeau.
Well, first of all, Jim, why in the world is an Ontario Conservative, allegedly, Premier Doug Ford, getting into sweetheart deals with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the first place?
Well, we're going to go on 5 years of seeing that, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 months in the beginning when he got rid of cap and trade. But something happened, and what happened is we're seeing the real Doug Ford and we're seeing the real Ontario PC Party. They are a wing of the Justin Trudeau Federal Liberal Party. And the first writing on the wall before COVID, before we had lockdowns, was the capitulation on the carbon tax. And so the real shame here, Dave, is, you know, he's got people out there like ministers and MPPs rewriting history, saying, well, we were forced into it from Justin Trudeau. We lost the Supreme Court case, so we might as well tax Ontarians and industry through the roof since we threw the case in court. But the real shame here, Dave, is let's say we get a Pierre Poilievre prime minister one day because he's going to win the leadership. Let's say we get a conservative government one day federally. And let's say they keep their commitment to axe the carbon tax. I know I'm counting on a lot, Dave. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. But let's just say, if they get rid of that federal carbon tax, we're going to still be stuck in Ontario with an industrial carbon tax at the provincial level that the federal government sometime in the future is not going to be able to get away with. So Pierre Poilievre, instead of endorsing Doug Ford, congratulating Doug Ford on a majority government, should be pushing Doug Ford to get rid of his industrial carbon tax and let Justin Trudeau do the tax and spend policies. But this PC government, they're exactly like the Justin Trudeau government and the Liberal Party, and they love the tax and spend.
Absolutely baffling and almost unbelievable, Jim. And yet I saw in the popular press, Ontario Environment Minister David Piccini says, I'm no fan of the carbon tax, but he said the government has no choice. They have to put this carbon tax in. It was for reasons I couldn't understand. Jim, can you explain what he means by the government having no choice? And is that really a genuine argument when it comes to this carbon tax in Ontario?
Well, they're very good at theater, the PC government. They love the theater and they get the talking points. But one thing you can count on, whether it's lockdowns, whether it's the Ontario sex ed curriculum, whether it's on critical race theory, or whether it's the carbon tax, that everything they say, every statement they put out is deceptive and hiding the truth of what's really going on. And that's not true that they had no choice. Number one, they had a choice to properly fight Trudeau's carbon tax in court. It was the federal government impeding on provincial jurisdiction. There was a three-part test. Do you know what they did in court, Dave? I sat there and I read the over 100-page submission from the Ontario lawyers that were tasked with it from the PC government, right from the Premier's office. They conceded that carbon pricing is the only way to regulate emissions, and it must be done to reduce emissions in Canada because there was a matter of national emergency. And they conceded that carbon pricing was the only way to do it. So what they did was, in 3 stages of the test, they conceded the first 2. They said to the court, yeah, Justin's right on part 1 and 2 of the test. The only difference they had to disagree with in court was to say to the judge, we're fine with carbon pricing, but we just don't like Justin's carbon price. We want to set our own that's a bit lower. If you go to court on that argument, Dave, you're going to lose. You've already said that everything that Justin's doing is a good idea. It's necessary. It's needed. It's a matter of national emergency. So they threw the court case, and they knew they were going to lose, but they did $200 million worth of theater to tell Doug Ford's voters that he was fighting it in court. And then, like I said, before the Supreme Court ruled, they cut the deal with Trudeau to put in an industrial carbon tax. And then even after the Supreme Court ruled and they threw the case, he still has a choice. He could say no to Trudeau. We are not putting an industrial carbon tax in Ontario. If you want to tax people because the Supreme Court has given you the green light, even though the Conservatives threw the case, then you got to do it, Justin. And he should be supporting the Conservative Party or Max Bernier in the PPC in the political fight to axe the carbon tax. That's the proper principled approach to this, so that one day when the Liberals are defeated federally, we can get rid of the carbon tax across the board. Instead, Doug Ford has made it harder to get rid of the carbon tax because now we have Trudeau's consumer carbon tax and we've got the Ford PC's industrial carbon tax, 2 carbon taxes instead of 1. And if we ever get rid of it at the federal level, we'll need a provincial government to get rid of it at the provincial level. He's made it worse, Dave.
Unbelievable. It is truly the worst of both worlds, Jim. And, you know, that's disturbing, too, the fact that they would have spent $200 million on political street theater, to use your words, Jim. It reminds me of many years ago, it was when the Liberals were running the province. And again, for political street theater, and it was a very popular thing to do, but it was a no-hoper. The transport minister going to court against the 407 electronic highway to get out of that contract. And the government's own lawyers saying, no, the contract's ironclad until 2098. You cannot do it. They did it anyways. They lost. And it was all about spending money to make them look good. This is what this reminds me of. But Jim, when we get down to the nitty gritty numbers, the current tax, as I understand it, $40 per ton today. That's going up to $65 in 2024. So less than a year and a half away. By 2031, $170 a ton, up from, as I said earlier, the current price of $40 a ton. Jim, what does this mean for the average Ontario consumer? Because people can say, well, it's a carbon tax to industry, but we all know when their costs go up, industry is certainly going to pass these costs along, are they not?
Well, industry, that's exactly right, Dave. Industry doesn't care. It's not like they're making industry pay for it with no impact on the consumer. The guys in the C-suite are just going to pass the tax down to the consumer, raise their prices. We see it at the gas pumps, and we're going to see it in other prices. Ontarians are already suffering with inflation because of the tax and spend policies of Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford and the impact of repeat lockdowns and all the other mismanagement we're seeing federally and provincially with governments walking hand in hand in what they're doing, Trudeau and Ford. And now this carbon tax, as it goes up, people are going to be hit even more, even harder. And affordability is going to get worse. And what is necessary? Who would have thought, Dave, that we've got a PC government who replaced 1 carbon tax with 2? Like, can you? It's ridiculous. And then the industry, Dave, like you said, they're fine with it. Yeah. Because if they hire the right lobbyists, they're going to get the shell game back with a subsidy, $500 million, a few $1 million, and they'll get the subsidy back from the Ford PC government. But the consumer at the bottom is not going to get any relief. Their prices are going to keep going up, and government spending is going to keep going up. And that's the real tragedy here.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.